Testing, testing, testing. Welcome everyone to Inside the Fight. Welcome everyone to Inside the Fight Live. And as they say with live events and TV and streams and all this, anything can happen. So hopefully this all goes well. This is the first episode of Inside the Fight Live. And we got a big one. We got to cover last week's MMA events, including the big UFC event coming up this weekend. We got a stacked card. But let's start with the stuff that happened last week. So we kicked things off with Bellator MMA. It was Michael Chandler taking on Benson Henderson for the second time in what they dubbed unfinished business, Bellator 243. And Benson Henderson suffered a first round knockout, TKO, the first of his career, I believe it was. Michael Chandler is a guy who has probably been one of the top fighters at Bellator. He improves to 4-1 in his last 5 fights. He has a record of 20-5. This was his last fight on his contract, so the question remains: what is next for Michael Chandler? I think, as any fight fan would like to say, you would like to see him jump to the UFC and see what happens when the competition level goes up. With Bellator, as we know, while some of their fighters are fantastic fighters, and some may argue that they have some of the best fighters, period. The issue is when you have two organizations, you can't fight each other, then the question remains, are you really the best or not? I think that's been the whole thing with Fedor Emelianenko, who unfortunately has never fought in the UFC, never will fight in the UFC, and even if he did, I think it's way past his time. But Michael Chandler, still young, still has a bright future ahead of him. Like I said, 20-5 career MMA record. Definitely would like to see him jump to the UFC. That being said, we had UFC action to cover this past weekend. We had, before we get to the UFC, we have breaking news. Paige Van Zandt has signed with Bare Knuckle Fighting Championship. If you've never heard of Bare Knuckle Fighting Championship, well, they got Paige Van Zandt. Paige Van Zandt suffered a loss in her last UFC fight, which was her last fight. She's a good fighter, and I think there are a lot of people who say she is more fit for the Instagram type of thing, but when you're a fighter in heart, you're gonna give it all. I think this is a good move for her. While the UFC has been the top of the pinnacle of the sport, sometimes you have to rebuild yourself, go down, and make a big name for yourself again. This is her opportunity to put notice to Bare Knuckle Fighting Championship, because never even heard of them. That's a lie. I did hear about them, but she brings attention to them. She's a big name, even though she's never been a champion. You know who Paige Van Zandt is. Her name just is that big of a deal. Well, like I said, we had UFC action this past weekend, and it was a former champ, Chris Weidman, and boy has Chris Weidman fallen. Chris Weidman just looked terrible in that first round until the very end. He got a takedown. He did win the second round, and he did win the third round. I will give him that. But that third round was horrific. And if you're a Chris Weidman fan, even you have to admit to yourself, this was a terrible performance. There was nothing good to write about this. And I think Chris Weidman even said himself, he was entering this fight with a 2-fight losing streak. And he said he desperately needed a win. And he did. I watched this fight with my father, and as we were watching, he's like, what is he doing? He's just holding him. He's not doing anything. And I tried to explain to him, if he tries to attack, what happens? He's going to get countered. So what he do? Held him the entire time, because he was most likely won the first round because of the takedown in the end. Definitely won the second round. No, but wasn't impressive. And that third round was just Chris Weidman on top control completely. Nothing else, nothing good. What's next for Weidman? So I heard an interesting one, and this was from my brother, who said, why don't we have Anderson Silva versus Chris Weidman 3? I don't think that's a bad idea. I think that could be an interesting fight. But will Silva want it? I don't know. Silva is definitely not the same fighter he was, but neither is Chris Weidman. So, might be a good fight for both of them. But time will tell what's next for Chris Weidman. He's 2-3 in his last 5. And like I said, he doesn't look impressive. He's no longer... If you look at his physique, he doesn't look as big as he used to be as well, which is concerning. But, like I said, what's next for him? It's up in the air. No, he's a big name, but definitely not as good as he once was. And the main event featured Lewis taking on Olenek, and let's just say, this was a great fight. There was many people who were like, who is this old man? This man's record is ridiculous. My dad was like, yo, ese viejo, which is an old man, can't compete with this guy. And he looked good in the first round. I gotta admit, Olenek, he caught him in a nice weird grapple, which I didn't think he was gonna do anything with it, but he did. He held it. He's a submission expert. But Derek Lewis is way too strong, way too powerful. Comes back out the second round and knocks him out. There were a few punches that I could have said behind the head, but during replays and slow down, it looks like they weren't. So I'm not gonna say anything about it. But Derek Lewis improves to 24-7. Now has a 3-fight win streak. What's next for Derek Lewis? Well, Curtis Blaze has called him out. Says he's willing to wait till December to fight him. While that seems like a long time, we'll see what's next for Derek Lewis. He definitely says he wants to continue to lose some weight. But he looked good. Looked like he has control of his cardio, because he didn't gas himself. He fought well in that first round. He got taken down a couple of times. He got into some submissions, but he survived it. Came out strong in that second round and knocked Olenek senseless. Now, the big UFC this weekend. UFC 252. Miocic versus Cormier 3. But before we get to that, we got to go with the undercard. Junior Dos Santos takes on Rosenstrike. I think this is an interesting fight for Junior Dos Santos, because I think if he loses this fight, his UFC career is over. He has a 2-fight losing streak. He has not looked good in any of his last fights. Rosenstrike, he's 4-1 his last 5 fights, with his last fight being a loss to Francis Ngannou, and Francis Ngannou could knock out anyone. So this is going to be a big test for Junior Dos Santos. Does he still have what it takes to compete in the UFC or not? My money is on Rosenstrike. I feel that Junior Dos Santos just isn't the same fighter anymore. One of my favorites, definitely was one of my favorites, but he has fallen, and fallen hard. Co-main event, Sean O'Malley taking on Marlon Vera. This is O'Malley's biggest test to date. Sean O'Malley, 12-0, he's undefeated. They're calling him the next Conor McGregor. We'll see. He has a great personality. He is marketable, and this is why he is definitely in the co-main event spot. Marlon Vera is no slouch. He is 4-1 in his last 5 fights. His last fight was a decision loss. This is going to be a very tough test for Sean O'Malley. He has looked good. You got to give the kid credit. This kid looks like he is a total package. But like I said, you can never rule out Vera. He is a veteran here in this fight, and he is going to bring it to Sean O'Malley. My money's on Sean O'Malley. I think he's going to surprise people. No, I don't know who the favorite is. But regardless of it, there's a lot to like about this kid. And this is going to be a great fight. I think it's going to be one of the best co-main events in a long time. Then again, there's been a lot of good UFCs this past month and the last month. So who knows? I think hopefully they'll continue to trend. Next up, the big fight that everyone is waiting for. The third encounter. Miocic defends his UFC heavyweight title against Daniel Cormier. And if you don't know the history, here we go. DC beat Stipe, took the title from him. In the rematch, Stipe looked bad in that first round, but then came out strong and knocked out DC, took that title back. Now, DC looks to get that title back and possibly retire. But we'll see. This is going to be an interesting fight. I don't know who to go for this fight. My heart says DC. It really does. I really want DC to win this. But I'm not going to lie. In that last fight, Stipe looked good. He looked bad in that first round, but he came out strong and he was fine. And then ended up taking the win. So I could see this happening this way. However, here's where it gets interesting. And I think this is where you're going to get very, very... the ideas that happen. If DC wins, he says he's going to retire. But that might not happen. He might get a fight that I think everyone will love to see. And that is Jon Jones jumping up to the heavyweight division to take on DC. Then again, it's also possible if Stipe wins, Jon Jones still gets a title shot against Stipe. You just don't know. But either way, this is going to be a fantastic main event. I think the world is going to be watching this one for sure, especially because DC is such a fan favorite who he has cried so many times, but we all cry. It's okay. But you gotta feel bad for him, especially with the fact that he's been cheated out so many times when he fought Jon Jones, then moved up back to the heavyweight division and then proved dominance over that division for a while until he lost the belt. You don't know. That's all I'm gonna say. This is gonna be a good fight. Like I said, I say Stipe takes this fight. I'm cheering for Daniel, but my money would be on Stipe. Well, guys, that's all I got for Inside the Fight live edition, the first live edition. I hope everyone enjoyed it. If you watched it, please leave a comment. Please leave your predictions, and if you want, like I said, all the feedback in the world. You can follow all my Instagram channels. They'll be in the description of this thing. And we'll see you guys next week for Inside the Fight live when we recap UFC 252. Until then, guys,